Finding slope from a table. All right, so when you're trying to find the slope in a table, what you have to remember is that slope, or the slope ratio, is represented as the change in y over the change in x. So what you have to do is first figure out how y is changing. So you can see here that 5 plus 2 is 7, plus 2 is 9, plus 2 is 11. So your change in y is 2. And then you do the same thing for the change in x. To get from 1 to 4, you add 3. 4 plus 3 is 7, and plus 3 gives you 10. And so your x would be 3. So since slope is the same thing as the change in y over the change in x, your slope is 2 over 3. Take a second and see if you can pause the video and try the next one on your own. Remember, the slope is the same as the change in y over the change in x. Okay, now that you've tried it on your own, if you go and try to figure out how y changes, 10 minus 5 is 5, minus 5 is 0, minus 5 is negative 5. So your change in y is negative 5. Then to find your change in x, negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4, minus 1 is negative 5, and minus 1 is negative 6. So your change in x is negative 1. Because your y is changing by going down and your x is changing by going left, this makes your slope end up being 5 over 1, or 5. When you're trying to find the slope from a table, just remember that your table can be written horizontally like it was in the first two examples, or it can be written vertically like it is here. Either way, you're still finding the change in y and the change in x. The important thing to remember is that your change in y is always going to be represented on the top of your ratio, and then the change in x will be on the bottom in order for you to find the slope correctly. So if you look here, y is changing by adding 10 each time. That is a 10, not a 16. So your change in y is 10. And then if you look at x, you can see that your change in x is it's minusing 5 each time. So it'll be 10 and negative 5. Whenever one of your values is negative and the other is positive, that means that your slope is going to end up being negative. So in this instance, you can actually simplify. And if you notice, 10 can be divided by 5 2 times, and 5 can be divided by 5 1 time. So your slope ends up being a negative 2, which means it's going in a downward direction from left to right. All right, for this last example, see if you can try it on your own. Just pause the video, and once you think you have an answer, unpause the video and see if you're correct. All right, again, remember, slope is the change in y over the change in x. And in your table, if you look at how y is changing, we are subtracting 4 each time. 12 minus 4 is 8, minus 4 is 4, minus 4 is 0. So the change in y is negative 4. And so for every 4 that we go down, now we have to figure out which way we're going on the x-axis. And if you notice, we get from 3 to 6 by adding 3. If you add 3 to 6, you get 9. And if you add 3, you get 12. Except I just went backwards. Okay, plus 3. Oops, sorry. Goodness. So that leaves your change in x to be 3. And again, since one of your values is negative, it means that the direction of your slope is going to be down, and you represent that by leaving your slope ratio as negative. All right, teach someone something new today, how to find slope ratio from a table.